The competitive 40K network presents Art of War. Art of War. Strategy and tactics. Discussions with the best players on the planet. Now your host, Nick Nanavati.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Art of War podcast. I'm your host, Nick Nanavati, and this week we are joined by a very special guest. We've got David all the way from the United Kingdom with his Necrons. David, how you doing?
I'm really good. How you doing, Nick?
I'm great. You've got the Hypercrypt, and the Hypercrypt is so fascinating because it's something we haven't talked about in months, and a lot of people think it's been nerfed kind of beyond repair. And not only that, but you've got it with a Tesseract Vault of all things. I'm so excited to talk about this, talk about your amazing showing, going 6-0 at the Glasshammer Open. Really amazing job, kind of out of nowhere. What's that been like for you, Dave?
Yeah, well, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. So yeah, thanks for the kind words about the list. It's been great fun, testing it the last few weeks and using it. It started out as a little bit of a joke, and it seems to have grabbed some attention. So great to be here and talking about it.
Yeah, it's definitely got a lot of people raising their eyebrows, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. So this is part one of a two-part conversation. In part one, we're going to be talking about you, Dave, and how you got into Warhammer, how did you go from that to going 6-0 at these major events, developing this list, what your play style with it is, how does it work, what is it? We're going to unpack all of that strategy in the part one of this two-part show. And then our patrons are going to have access to part two, which is going to include all of the games you played, like the play-by-play moves, the tactics, the things you're watching out for, the literal matchups, like the story of the event. So if you're interested in that, you can subscribe to the show, patreon.com/AOW40K. It really helps us continue providing this podcast to you, and you'll get this episode along with 240 plus other episodes in our Discord server, all to connect with other gamers. So please help support the show, check us out, and without further ado, Dave, let's get into it. Can you tell me how you got into Warhammer?
Well, the story is quite long and extractive, but I first started playing when I was 13 at school, and which feels like a long time ago now. And I started off with what was fantasy back in the day with my Empire, and played a little bit of Epic thrown in there, which was all good fun. But at the age of 16, I finished high school and then joined the military, where I kind of walked away from Warhammer for a few years while I was traveling around the world and doing the things that the military do, and didn't really, think about Warhammer for a long time. What really got me back into it, I kind of call it my, restart, or my second coming of Warhammer, was my son was coming to visit my hometown to meet my parents, and we were walking past a Games Workshop, and as we're going past it, can we pop in? I've just started building a Blood Angels list, and I was like, oh my god! And I'd not touched Warhammer for about 20 years, and here's my young son now, who'd been playing it with friends at school, completely unbeknownst to me, and we dove into the shop. I'm back there in my 30s at this point. I've not seen anything about GW or Warhammer for a good few years, and been completely out the loop, and see the change in models since when I used to play them. Some of the old metal, white metal models, some of the really old sculpts, to see the new plastic ones that they were doing, particularly as Age of Sigmar had just started, and kind of got back into it again there as a way to connect with my son and do things that we could do together, where I wasn't this old fuddy-duddy person, and I could actually do some cool things with him and communicate with him in a thing that he would understand, and that's how it started again. And
Dave, I love that. I really love that story, like a way to connect with your son. That's really so cool. And I've been playing this game for 20 years as well, so to see you're starting there, coming back into it, oh wow, all the models are different, the rules are different, this is a different game, what's happened, I totally resonate with that, because I've just seen the progression over time, and I love your story. It's just really cool.
Yeah, I think the funniest thing about it all was that he was playing Blood Angels at the time, and we walked into the store, and I'd never really played 40k much when I was younger, being more on the fantasy side. But these Blood Angels kind of clicked with me, being ex-military as I was, the aggressive play style and all the combat-orientated models there. I kind of took over his army, and he then picked up Necrons.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and he's currently at university this last year doing his final year. It shows how much older he's got and how much older I am. But this year, because Necron seemed to be quite good when the Codex dropped, I kind of asked his permission to take over his army for a bit to play with it. And we had a bit of a joke to see how quickly I could overtake him in the rankings. And he didn't like it in the first tournament that I went to. I beat him. So I kind of overtook his score, but he's cool with it now.
Well, that's awesome. I love that story. Like I said, it's just so fun and so cool to see a father-son bonding over that, and you guys swapping armies and having a little competitive banter. That's what it's about. Yeah. So how did you overtake your son? Like, where did this competitive spirit come from? Like, how did you go from like, oh, let's Warhammer, let's revisit it, the Belt Angels are cool, to, okay, we're winning Glasshammer? That's like quite a progression of skill.
Yeah, it's a bit of a big jump. So we basically live in the north of England, near a town called Bury, and they had a cool little gaming group. There was a great GW store there, run by Dan Jackson at the time. And we kind of got into it really quickly. We started developing armies, having lots of really fun games and, more thematic games. I would say kind of just enjoying the hobby, enjoying learning how to get back into the painting scene, teaching him how to paint a little bit, and, just running what I would call fun and cool lists. And it was one of the guys there said that he was going along to a tournament. And I didn't even know at the time that there were these, this competitive landscape of 40k and all these tournaments going on. Shows how naive I was getting back into the hobby. And so we decided to go to a one-dayer, a little RTT near the city of Liverpool. And my first ever tournament game, you probably know this person, was against this guy called Manny Chima.
And he was your first ever tournament game?
Yeah, my first ever tournament game. Yeah. And Manny's a cool guy and everything, but he educated me in about 40 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Manny's not your easiest round one ever.
No. Well, I took it. I took this small, Blood Angel list, couple of scouts, this one captain that wasn't optimized. There was no optimization in the list. It's what
it was your first tournament.
And Manny's list was the Horrid, the Imperial, the Astra Militarum battalion, and the Custards 3 shield bike captains, and then 2 slam caps and a Libby Dread. And I was like, oh, you can take all that, can you? You can build a list like that. And then that's how I kind of got into it, into the tournament scene.
So you liked it. You were like, oh, wow, that was like a cool mishmash of broken models, and that was awesome. I want to do that.
Well, it was more the fact that because I'm quite a competitive person, and, I like having fun games. I will still do a thematic game every now and then, but the competitive scene really did interest me, and it was more about how you can jump into a codex and kind of see what's broken, but also the way I did it slightly different was to fit it into my play style. So it was taking me a while to get to a stage where I'm going, 4-1 and 5-0s, and the way I've done that is by kind of tweaking what most people would call a meta list, but tweaking it more into my play style, which could be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more on the front foot. And I tend to find I do better that way rather than if I play somebody else's kind of list or style. So I just try and keep it fun and keep it enjoyable. And if I win, fantastic. If I don't, hey, as long as I have a great time, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I love that. I think there is real value to learning from all the thousands of millions of lists out there for Warhammer. And, you can see what's good and what's bad. And that's a really helpful place when you are so lost in the sea of it all. But beyond that, making a list your own and like putting your stamp on it, your spin on it, your own style to it, that is where you find real enjoyment in the hobby. And also you'll find better results with it in most cases, just because it clicks with you, right? And I think that really is apparent in the list that you took this past weekend.
Yeah, just a little bit, but yeah, no. And I think if you build a list that's for you, I've got friends that do a similar thing. When you build a list that's your list, whether you win or lose, you tend to have more fun with it, right? And in reality, that's what it's all about. It's rolling dice, playing toy soldiers, making new friends, and then having a beer with them as a victor or crying into the beer as a loser at the end. It's all about good fun and just enjoying the moment.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. attitude. I think that's a great attitude about the game and just a general good relationship with the hobby. So focusing more on like how you talked about the aggressive play style that you have kind of adopted and like your play your own play style with your lists, build up your own lists and your competitive nature. You talked about how your first round ever was against Manichima and you were like, I want more. That now you're winning Glasshammer, right? Like there's a lot of ways to get better at Warhammer and analyze Warhammer. That's a long journey. So how did you get better? Were you just playing games against better and better opponents growing with time? Were you like studying it in a specific way? Like how did you learn the skill of Warhammer?
So at first I was just going on to tournaments. So I've got a couple of friends, they like doing tournaments. The northwest of England has got a really strong meta. There's lots of really great players based up here in the northwest. And, we have Element Games, we've got the Black Tower guys, we've got the Lords of Bard who hold lots of regular tournaments. So for me, I've moved a little bit further away from my local club. So it's harder for me to have lots of regular games there. So going to tournaments is a great way to go and have a number of games against different people, make new friends. So I started doing that, and it was in that element of taking my what I would call my fun lists, getting my butt handed to me every other week, being happy with a 2-3, and thinking actually these guys are doing something different here. They're doing something better. What is it they're doing? And that's when I started really looking more into the competitive scene as a kind of a standalone part of my 40k hobby. So I still like doing fun games at home with friends, but when I'm going to a tournament now, I try and think a little bit differently. So I try and look at what is the current meta out there, what is it I'm trying to achieve at the tournament. It's not necessarily always to go out there and win it. It's just trying to be able to test new styles, test new models, etc. And just going with the plan of rule number 1, have lots of fun. Rule number 2, what is it I'm trying to achieve this tournament? And when I first started out, I was finding it really difficult to find that I call it that secret recipe, that magic ingredient that turns an okay list into a great list. And I very quickly figured out that what it was me. I was building lists that really were very good, analysing, where I was getting the most efficient, damage output for the points, the most efficient, objective holding for the points, the mobility I would need. The lists were generally good, and what was letting the list down actually was my ability, and it was because I'd just not done enough of the tournament scene. So myself and a friend, we decided to start hitting, lots of tournaments, tweaking the list as we went, trying to find what worked well for us, what didn't work well for us, and build up that knowledge, not just of the list we were playing, but starting to build that knowledge up of other players, how they play, how they build the lists, what kind of, lists are great going into ours, what aren't as good, trying to figure out where our weaknesses were, where our strengths were, and adjusting each game accordingly. And I still find now, anybody that watched the stream, the last game against the World Eaters, I don't have a lot of experience versus World Eaters. And it's probably the most tense game ever when nobody moved anything for about 3 turns. And it was only on turn 3 where I suddenly realised, wait a minute, these guys aren't that bad, and started to step out and do things. So there's still so much learning to do. For me, I've still got a long way to go to where I think I want to be. We've just signed up to our new LVO, our first LVO that we're ever going to. So myself and Dale Watts, who's my regular tournament colleague, we're going over to Las Vegas for the first time ever in January. Nice. So that's going to be a new, exciting experience.
Yeah, I love that. That'll be very fun.
So for me, I still consider myself on rung 1 or 2 of the ladder of becoming a really good, consistent, competitive player. So it's still a long way to go, I think.
I love the humbleness along with the success. That's a rare quality and one that speaks volumes about your character. But let's talk more about this army list and really get into it. What army did you take to the Glasshammer Open here?
I took Necrons with Hypercrypt, and it's been kind of adjusted over the last few weeks. And it's something that I kind of put together on the back of a bit of a joke with Dale. He was like, "Oh, I bet you can't fit a Tesseract Bolt into it," and I was like, "Really? Watch this!" and at the time, the Tesseract Bolt wasn't really being taken by anybody, so that was kind of the basis behind the entire
so
list.
the Tesseract Vault was a legit joke. Like it was a meme dare type of unit.
It started out that way. I'd never seen Tesseract Vaults anywhere on the tournament scene. Nobody had them. People had had, there's lots of monoliths flying around. We just had the LVO one at the start of this year with the monolith. Hypercrypt was in a good spot. People were still taking Canoptek Court. I was still trying to figure my way around the Necrons, having just finished playing with my Grey Knights last year. And I was like, look, let's just start with the Tesseract Vault. I had one lying in the cupboard.
Let's just start with the Tesseract Vault.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so we started off with that, and that was going to be the whole basis for the list. I love the Nightbringer, so we decided to throw a Nightbringer in there. I just think the whole backstory behind the Nightbringer is pretty cool. I love the idea of Satan shards and what happened in the stories around the Necrons. So we threw the Nightbringer in, and that was it. So that's where I was starting from originally. At the time, I was just trying to figure out how to optimize the list for tournaments. So it started out with originally, things like Enmitic Stormlord with some Lich Guard. I had a few death marks in there, a couple of Transcendents, but I was getting my butt handed to me. A lot of the lists over here had the Black Templar combos with lots of Reapers and Lancers. All those lethal wounds were just absolutely ripping me apart. So when the new, I call it the edition 10.5, when the new edition was starting to leak out and some of the ideas are coming around that, I thought, let's just restart it. Let's try and build a good list around the Tesseract Vault, some Satan, and then when the points drop, we'll just see what we have available, and I'll play with that. So we literally just started with one Tesseract Vault, the Nightbringer, the Void Dragon, 2 Transcendents, and then I just waited 2 weeks for the points to start leaking out and some of the points to start coming. And I'm not going to lie, I was a bit shocked at how little points I had left when I chucked them in. And I was just trying to figure out a way to merge those 4 big Satan shards, that Tesseract Vault, merge it in with my play style, and then figure out how I was going to play Pariah Nexus. There's a few people that are like, I at the time when I was at Glasshammer, there was a few people that, oh my God, I can't believe you brought that. That's terrifying. There's some people that, oh my God, that's awesome. But in reality, it started off, as you say, with a bit of a laugh in our games room at the house, trying to figure out how to take this big monolith of a vehicle with a Satan shard stuck in it.
Yeah.
So that was the whole basis behind those 4 characters and the Tesseract Vault. I didn't expect it to do as well as it did. I certainly didn't think that
was this like your first models. Breakout event? Was this like the first time you really did it?
No, I trialed it the week before on the old points. So basically, I went to an Ironman as my practice for this tournament. So we did 5 games in one day in Blackpool. The Black Tower Gaming guys organised an Ironman event, and I was thoroughly expecting, when I submitted the list, that the points would change or the rules would change in a big way, and I would have to do a big adjustment. But I just kind of wanted to see how all those Satan and the Transcendents would work. So, I trialed the list exactly as it was on the day. So I'll go through the list in full detail. But I trialed the list then. We won all 5 games on the day. And I was like, oh my God, there's something really good about this list. It not only plays the game well, but it fits right into my play style. And there's 4 Satan and a Tesseract Vault on the other side of the table. I don't know what it is, but everyone would look at it and just go, "Oh my God, how do I deal with that?" Right. And it's such a big distraction, and people kind of they struggle to figure out okay, well, if I deal with the Tesseract Vault, I've then got 4 Satan coming at me at full tilt. If I deal with a Satan, then I've got 3 in a Tesseract Vault that are going to open up on me. If I try and deal with everything, I'm going to do nothing. Yeah. And you can kind of see the brain figuring it out. Right. Yeah, exactly. And
why don't you just go through the list, like, top to bottom?
Of course, yeah. So it's Satan Shard of the Nightbringer, as I've mentioned. We had the Satan Shard of the Void Dragon, and then 2 Transcendent Satans. And then the other 2 characters I had was a Hexmark destroyer, and then one more Hexmark destroyer, which is the Warlord, and he had the enhancement for Dimensional Overseer, so I could have the option of having a 4th unit to take up into hyperphase. And that's all the characters. I then had 3 units of Deathmarks, really good utility units for their points. Having Deep Strike, having precision snipers, also having the ability to shoot at a unit coming down out of strat reserve is a great option for me. And then I had 2 Locust heavy destroyers, one with the Enmitic Exterminator and one the Gauss Destructor, and in reality they're just there to help me again, play the game. And then the big beast, the Tesseract Vault. So there's not actually a lot in the list when you break it down like that.
It's basically 4 Satan, a Tesseract Vault, and some junk to run around and score the points, win the game.
Exactly, and people laugh about that a little bit at the end there, that bit of junk to help play the game, but actually,
that's the most important part.
Bit of junk, it's the most important part. But some people became so fixated on the 4 Satan and the Tesseract Vault, they didn't really realise until it was too late that all the hard work was being done by the Deathmarks and the Hexmark.
So walk me through like the profiles here. I can't say that I'm too familiar with the Tesseract Vaults. Like what are you running at me?
So the Tesseract Vault. So I'll start with the Tesseract Vault because it was the MVP of all 11 games, both at the Iron Man and then at the Glasshammer tournament. So its defensive profile is pretty simple. It's a toughness 12 behemoth. It has a 2-up save, 4-up invulnerable save, and 24 wounds. So from a defensive point of view, it takes a lot to punch through it. And having a 4-up invul, it is a bit casino, but actually a 4-up invul, with reroll, potential, is quite hard to punch through. And most of the
I love that you just said, you just said that. You were like, the 4-up invul is a bit casino, but I'm good at rolling 4s.
And when I needed a 4, I got a 4. When I didn't, when it didn't matter, I failed them all. So
that's the skill.
I got a little bit, exactly. So but from an offensive point of view, it was really good. And so the vehicle has 3 Tesla spheres. So they've got 4 Tesla spheres. It's got 6 attacks each, a total of 24 shots. BS3, strength 7, no AP, 1 damage, but they also have sustained hits too. It's your perfect Tesla weapon. So it's fantastic for clearing out, low armor infantry horde type units. The 24 shots, I was invariably getting 24 plus hits. Strength 7 meant I was wounding a lot of them on 2s and 3s, and it would just clear them out of the way. So anybody was putting anything out onto an objective, pushing some cheap scouts out or some jackals or anything like that. This thing just picks those units up, doesn't think twice about it, and that's it. Your meat shield is gone, your objective holders have gone, and it's really good for doing that. Coupled with the fact that it's a very tall model, all you have to do is tow into some buildings and onto a piece of terrain. It not only can see through that, but if you're on a piece of terrain, it can see down. It can look right down on you. There's not a lot of escaping it. And that was a lot of the feedback that I got on the 2 tournaments that I took him, that you just can't hide from it. Even if you are far away from it, because the weapons, the longest range is 24 inch, you just hyperphase it over and it drops in 3 inches away from you with the cosmic precision stratagem, and it can see what it wants. The Tesla bit was pretty good for clearing out infantry. But what really made this a great model to take, and it performed so much better than I originally thought, was its Satan powers. So it has 3 Satan powers. You can take 2 of them each shooting phase. You pick which powers you want. The most fun one by a long shot is Time's Arrow. So it's a 24-inch range precision weapon. It's 1 shot hitting on a 2. It's only strength 3, -2, 6 damage. But the best bit about it is it's an anti-character 4+ dev wounds.
That's hilarious. Just kill that guy right on the squad.
It's like, Amanius Calgar, a Scorpet Lord. It just goes, I don't want that character in that unit anymore. and I kind of got into the clutch of going zip every time I rolled the 4-up, and it was quite funny. You know, I'd be over there with having a good laugh with my oppos. You know, I'd have this one dice. And I'd have
sounds like you've got a good
CP.
banter about it, right? No,
yeah, so
I'd playing this kind of army. Yeah.
But I'd always be saving a reroll for that 4-up. You know, and a couple
Really?
of
So
times
you're like actually sniping characters out of squads? Like this is part of the.
Oh yeah. Just take characters out. But on some of them, you know, particularly like there's a Grey Knights player, absolutely fantastic oppo with Glasshammer, had 3 Libbies. And the Brotherhood Librarians are probably one of the most dangerous characters for the Satan, just because of the amount of mortal wounds they can put out. And I was like, I cannot afford to leave those librarians bouncing around the board. So I would he'd have to keep moving them into buildings. I'd keep hyperphasing around the board, and it was just like turn 1, yeah, right, that librarian's gone. No, turn 2, that librarian's gone. And it was like he kind of was getting a bit tired about it, I think, at the end. But in reality, you know, it had to happen, especially as in his first turn he rolled 2 6s with the 2 librarians that were like
throwing mortals at each other. So what are the other 2 profiles of the Tesseract Vault?
So the other 2 are Cosmic Fire. It's an 18-inch flaming torrent weapon. So it's 3d6 shots, strength 6, -2, 1 damage. Ignores cover, but again, that's also got devastating wounds. So that's another anti-horde type of weapon. Really good. I didn't use it that much because I was saving my other Satan power, which is Antimatter Meteor. So 24-inch, D6 +3 blast, BS3, strength 10, -3, 3 damage, indirect fire, dev wounds. So it's one of those weapons you know, even if you could hide in a building, you can't hide from it, kind of things.
And it finds you.
Yeah, and the nerf to indirect fire didn't really bother this one. You know, we were hitting on 4s indirect anyway, so it didn't really matter. And you just get so much utility with that weapon. You know, if you want to move out and engage, you can see the person. It's fantastic. If you don't, you want to be a little bit cagey early on, you can reach out into Marines that are in cover in the centre of the board with no problems. And with having the 3 damage, it's great against, you know, Terminators, Possessed, you know, all those big, you know, 3 wound you know, beasties that are going to come running through buildings and slap you away. Yeah, so it was a great weapon. You know, so that and
the Tesseract Vault though is like an imposing model. Like it's enormous. Like I don't know if you've seen it in real life, folks, but it is like a 1 foot by 1 foot floating pyramid in the air. It is kind of ridiculous. Yeah. Like, how did you find moving it? Like physically, was that a challenge? Was you able to play with this thing effectively?
Pre-hyperphase, I would have never have taken it. It was a table piece that was painted in the cabinet gathering dust. Hyperphase, really, Tesseract Vault is fantastic in hyperphase because you don't have to worry so much about moving it across the board. It only has an 8-inch movement. So even now with the new edition or the new 10.5, with the overhang rule, you can move it between buildings, but because it's, as you said, it's 11 inches, 10 and a half, 11 inches wide. It's only got 8 movement. So the overhang rule doesn't really help it get around that much more. So in reality, you're hyperphasing it around. And that's what I do with it. It's normally an auto pickup on my hyperphase.
I mean, that really leads us into the next question, which is basically, how do you play this army? Right.
Yeah, so for me, I tend to run my Satan around the board. I kind of put them out in pairs. So a lot of the work, as I said earlier, is done by the Death Marks, the Hexmarks, and the Tesseract Vault. So it basically, while the Satan are imposing, they're coming at you, while the Tesseract Vault is bouncing up and down, my oppo is generally trying to deal with them, because if you don't, they're going to just delete your army in 2 or 3 turns. It doesn't matter who you are. If they get into you, they're going to start deleting things. And if they don't, the Transcendent Satan, they tend not to put a lot of hurt out, but they can tie up a 10-man unit of Terminators. They can hold up Berserkers, Jackals, etc. So they come out at you. You've got to deal with them, because if you don't, it's a bit of a problem. And then I'm just hyperphasing my death marks and hex marks around the board, and they're coming down, behind enemy lines, or the new deploy homers. I forget the name of it. And if there's nothing for them to do, I just bring them back down into my deployment zone, make sure I'm covering the entire deployment zone with them, because if you deep strike anybody in, as one player found out in the Black Tower Gaming, you deep strike a unit in, you've got 3 units of Deathmark that potentially have a free shot at you. You've got a Hexmark that can have a free Overwatch. They've got precision, so you're probably going to be losing a character if there's a character with them, and if not, you're going to be losing a few models. So I use them to kind of protect my backline and to play the game, jump onto objectives, and that just leaves the Force Satan and the Tesseract Vault to go around doing what they do best, which is deleting little plastic toy soldiers off the board.
Yeah. Right. So are you finding like most of your games you're like tabling your opponent with this army over the course of the game? Are you like not interacting and like picking on the edges? Like, what's the tempo of the game?
So it depends on who's going first and who I'm playing. If I'm playing very mobile, aggressive armies, I'll tend to sit back until I know what their plan is to do, and then we'll come bouncing out with Hyperphase and the Satan. The more challenging games for me are things like Tau, the new Stamper the new Tyranids, they seem to be good again, and the Tyrannofexes, where they'll kind of sit back and they'll have lots of units as lone operative, etc., and it'll be quite cagey. But yeah, generally, because I play aggressive, I generally want to go second, but it doesn't always happen. It doesn't bother me. I'll kind of push out with the Satan if I can understand what my opponent's goal is like to be, and I'll push out with them knowing that they'll probably survive. And even if I lose one, I've still got 3 more. I'll just go after the oppo. And invariably by turns 3 or 4, they're starting to run out of viable units, and I'll start picking up the tail enders around about turns 4 or 5. So yeah, it's pretty brutal. And when it goes off this list, there's just no stopping it.
Now, I know there's like a big dichotomy between going first and second with this army, because when you're going second, you can pick up your units on there after your opponent takes their first turn. You can null deploy and like get the game going on your bottom 1, which gets you 5 rounds of activating and that bottom of turn advantage. Does going first look like anything? Like, what happens when you go first?
Depends who I'm playing against. If I'm playing against a Grey Knights player who can also basically hyperphase, I'll generally play defensive my first turn. I won't push out too far. I'll try and cover at least a third of the board, so people can't deep strike in, and I'll just look to see how they play. If I'm up against an Orcs army or a World Eaters, I'm definitely not coming out because I know they're going to be all over me.
Very match specific.
Yeah, so I tend to see who I'm playing, what the mission is, what I'm going to try and achieve, and having fun and winning out and killing models is just a bonus at the end of the day. So yeah, but invariably I'm kind of hoping for turn 2, just because. Are you
typically like playing a reactive game, just like seeing what your opponent does and just putting models in a place that deal with it?
I tend to do that. It's part of my military training. You kind of always react to the enemy's move, and that's what I tend to do. Some games, though, if I get out there really quick and I have a really good turn 1, I'm just going to come at you, and we'll deal with the consequences in turn 3. Just depends what kind of mood I'm in and how I'm doing in the tournament. If I've already lost 1 or 2 games, I'll just come out having fun, flailing Transcendent Satans about and seeing what they can do.
Right. No, I love that attitude about the game. I mean, you have a genuine appreciation for just the fun of it, and I absolutely love that. It's something that you don't see as a common trait when talking about the game at the level of people who like go undefeated a lot. It's not that they lose sight of that, but it's not the focus, and I think that that's really unique to you, and I love that.
Yeah, no, and I think I've been pretty lucky. Most of my opponents, the vast majority of them, have a similar way of thinking, and that's what I do it for. I try not to get too serious because at the end of the day, everybody makes mistakes on the board, and how you deal with it. At the time, it depends on how much enjoyment each of you have. So I'm pretty chilled out, very much a by intent kind of player, and I certainly know I make mistakes, and I kind of I'm very relaxed when my opponent makes a mistake and they want to take it back a little bit, because at the end of the day, it's toy soldiers and dice rolling. So if you can't have fun doing that, what can you have fun doing?
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Just a couple more questions on how your list works and all that. I totally get the secondary plan with just like these random little solo destroyers and death marks showing up where they need to and doing the actions or whatever. What's the plan for primary? Like, you have 5 real models to play the game with.
Yeah, so the first one is the Tesseract Vault. I forgot to mention is OC8, and
that helps.
It's fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. Just if you want to lift that up and drop it down on an objective, that really does help. In reality, though, early on in the game, when you're trying to figure out what the other person's doing, advanced moving the 2 Transcendent Satans, so they've got a really cool ability that instead of rolling for the advanced roll, they can basically just do a blip across the board. So it's like going into deep strike and straight back down. So if you need to grab an objective or 2 very early on in game, they can do. They used to be able to do an action, but obviously they can't now post the new edition 10.5. So you've kind of got a bit more, not cautious is the wrong word, but just be aware of the fact that if you are going to throw them out there, you only throw them out there to get onto an objective, and they're not going to be able to do much else until you've seen what the other player is going to do. So turn 1, I'm pretty low scoring on the primaries. Normally I've got my home objective and maybe one other in the middle. But yeah, turn 2, I definitely come out and start grabbing them all.
Right.
So.
Do you find your opponent has the ability to block you out for primary by like covering the chip per se, where they like you can't even 3-inch deep strike onto the objective marker?
Yeah.
You're pushed off.
The good players do. Yeah, the good players do, and I even tell people to do it. I'm a bit of an idiot sometimes.
That's so awesome.
If you put it on the disc in the middle, mate, I can't get on. And they'll do that. But
I'm the same way. I'll tell people that, and then they'll forget, and I just say, I can't play for you.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I always have a rule. I'll tell you at least once. I don't do gotchas. I'll tell you at least once, and I'll give you a bit of a weird noise if you try and do it again. But after that, all bets are off, and like I said, I can't play the game for them. But So people do try and cover. But like I said earlier, I tend to run the Satan around early on in pairs, because it's very easy to isolate a Satan. And if you've got the firepower, you can generally kill one, especially if you've got lots of attacks and they're all lethal hits, blah, blah, blah. So if you run around in pairs, people are less willing to get onto an objective with them. Right. So I normally have one Transcendent with the Nightbringer, one with the Void Dragon, and they'll kind of come around the board edges onto those objectives. And I've generally always got one that's very close to heroic intervention, which is one of the nicest things that GW ever did for me in the latest update, is to make that 1 CP.
1 CP heroic is such a move.
I know, it's great. I love it.
That actually leads us to the CP question. How are you spending your strats?
Too quickly. So I try not to use the Cosmic Precision one too much. I think it's very easy to get into the pattern of using that and relying on it a little bit too much. I tend to save it for when I need to get a unit into the back lines for behind enemy lines, or the new deploy home as it's a psychic low, so locus or something.
Precision.
That's a stratagem for 3 inches away. This list, tends not to have a lot of them. There's a 1 CP strat that allows me to activate reanimation protocols when models are in hyperphase, but I tend not to use that much, because invariably when I'm putting stuff in, it's either a Satan that's lost 1 or 2 wounds, or I've lost 1 death mark, and I kind of don't need to worry about reanimating them. One that I do think is pretty cool. There's a 1 CP stratagem, and I'm going to have to get the name of it up now. But yeah, 1 CP stratagem that allows me to make in the shooting phase a Titanic model. So here we are. It's entropic damping. So in the opponent's shooting phase, when they select the target, 1 Titanic model, a Transcendent Satan, that's been selected to the target. Basically the weapons equipped in that unit that are 18 inches away shooting the Titanic model, the weapons are hazardous. And I've used it a couple of times just for a bit of a giggle. And once was when it was an Astra Militarum Stormlord who fired all his heavy bolters and the big 12 damage gun. I forget the name of the gun on the front of it, and he fired it all at the Tesseract Bolt and did 0 damage to the Tesseract Bolt, and then proceeded to do 9 mortal wounds to himself.
Oh my God.
Which was quite savage. So there's that one, which is pretty good. And most of them that I'm using really are heroic intervention. I will tend to every now and then use a fire overwatch, particularly with the Transcendents, because they've got a sustained hits 1 weapon, and it's normally when it's a really important enemies falling back or moving or doing something when they've got 1 or 2 wounds left on them, because they've got 6 shots. The odds are I'm going to get one of them is a 6, and then because it's sustained hits 1 with a strength 8 weapon that does D3 damage, I can normally plink a wound or 2 off when I really want to. So I might save that for there. And one that I've got to get much better at using is rapid ingress. And,
I imagine that's a big part of your army.
Well, it is, and I always forget it. So my teammate Dale is desperately trying to get me to think of it, because I get so caught up in the moment of hag phase, we come down, let's go charging, yay. I completely forget that if it's not optimal, I could just leave one of them off the table and bring it in rapid ingress. Particularly the Void Dragon and the Nightbringer from the edge, and then they're going to move, and then they're straight to face. So it's something I have to keep reminding myself to do. So yes, those are generally the only ones I do. I tell my oppo before the game those are the ones that I'm going to use, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I got one more question for you, David, before we move on to part 2 and go through your games. If you could give one piece of advice to aspiring Warhammer players, what would it be? Have fun.
Don't worry about being a super competitive player. Don't worry about buying lists that meet certain things. Go into the store. Go and look at the models. Buy ones that you like the look of, that you like the story behind, something where you can have a bit of an emotional connection to it, and you'll enjoy the hobby so much more.
That's
been the goal for me. I have far too much plastic lying in my garage waiting to be built and painted, because I just can't help it. Every time I see something that looks cool, I've got to have it. Which is why I have to work, just so I can pay for it. So
ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Well, awesome, David. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate talking to you. Talking about your Necron list. It's really exciting, and I love your attitude.
No, thank you. It's great to be invited and to be a part of the show. Thank you.
Hey, you're very welcome. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. Every single week, we appreciate you. And to support the show, you can check us out on patreon.com/AOW40K. That's where David and I are going to continue this conversation, talking about his Necron army, how he plays it, and going through his games from the Glasshammer Open, where he went undefeated. Stay tuned for more episodes, and we will catch you later.
Like what you just listened to? Check out Art of War Down Under and Art of War Unbroken on the competitive 40K network. TheArtOfWar40K.com.